It was a confrontation that lasted less than 90 seconds, yet it would echo for months. It wasn't a prepared statement from the White House podium, but a raw, impromptu declaration of war over a line drawn not in the political sand, but in the human heart. The day had begun with a quiet, sun-drenched peace that felt a world away from the storm to come. In the private residence, Karoline Leavitt shared a rare, unhurried breakfast with her husband, Nicholas. He slid his phone across the table, showing her a picture from their weekend hike in the Shenandoah, a candid shot of them laughing, framed by a canopy of green. "That's my world, right there," he said, his voice soft. "Forget all this." He gestured vaguely towards the window, towards the capital city waking outside. "Just us. That's the whole thing." Karoline smiled, a genuine, unguarded expression the press corps rarely saw. She squeezed his hand, the warmth of it a silent promise. This, she thought, was the anchor. This was the reason the relentless pressure of her job was bearable. It was a private strength, a sacred space she guarded more fiercely than any political talking point. Hours later, that sacred space would be invaded. The south lawn was bathed in the hazy glow of a summer afternoon. Karoline was walking back toward the West Wing after a brief appearance, surrounded by the usual chaotic scrum of reporters, a rolling wave of shouted questions and jostling bodies. This was the informal dance she knew well. The press gaggle was less formal than the briefing room, more of a rapid-fire exchange on the move. She was deftly parrying a question about new trade tariffs when a voice, sharp and loud, cut through the din. It was Natasha Bertrand of CNN, her arm extended, phone recording, her expression one of predatory focus. She didn't wait to be called on. She bulldozed over a junior reporter from a smaller outlet. "Leavitt! A question about your husband's past business dealings!" she yelled, her voice laced with insinuation. "Given the significant age difference and his financial history, aren't you concerned about the perception that he's leveraging your proximity to power for personal gain?" The air crackled. The other reporters fell silent, their own questions dying on their lips. It was a deeply personal, ad hominem attack, disguised as a question of ethics. For a split second, Karoline's face was a blank mask, but her eyes, cold and focused, locked onto Bertrand. She stopped walking. She slowly raised a single hand, a simple gesture that commanded absolute silence. The gaggle froze. The only sounds were the distant hum of city traffic and the whirring of camera shutters. When she finally spoke, her voice wasn't loud, but it carried with the unnerving calm of a gathering storm. "I will stand here all day and answer any question you have about this administration, this country, or my work on behalf of the American people," she began, her gaze unwavering from Bertrand's. "My life in this role is an open book. But let me be perfectly clear." She took a half step forward, closing the space slightly. "You are standing on the grounds of the White House, a place that belongs to the people. You will not use it, and you will not use your press credential to publicly smear a private citizen who cannot defend himself here. You will not attack my family. That line will not be crossed. Not today. Not ever." She held Bertrand's gaze for another 3 heartbeats, a silent, steely challenge. Then, without another word, she turned and walked crisply away, leaving the entire press corps standing in stunned silence on the lawn. The firestorm was instantaneous. Before Karoline had even reached her office door, the clip was already rocketing across the internet. Her young aide, Jenna, met her just inside the West Wing, her face pale, her own phone buzzing incessantly in her hand. "It's everywhere," Jenna whispered, as if describing a natural disaster. Within the hour, the hashtag #FLeavitt line was the #1 trend in the world. Memes flooded social media. Karoline's face superimposed onto the body of a lioness protecting her cub, her hand held up to hot the press, captioned with the line. Cable news went into overdrive. On CNN, panels were convened to defend Natasha Bertrand's tough but necessary questioning, framing Karoline's response as an attack on a free press. On other networks, she was lauded as a hero. Pundits praised her grace under fire and her courageous defense of decency. The moment was sliced, diced, and analyzed from every conceivable angle, a perfect encapsulation of a deeply divided nation. But inside the White House, the viral victory felt very different. The public praise was a distant roar. The private cost was immediate and sharp. That night, long after the sun had set, Karoline sat slumped in her office chair, the only light coming from the glow of her monitor. Jenna was quietly sorting through the deluge of emails that had flooded the press office's public inbox. Most were supportive, but the hateful ones were venomous. "Let me see them," Karoline said, her voice heavy with exhaustion. Jenna hesitated. "Maybe not tonight. It's bad." "Show me, Jenna." Reluctantly, Jenna turned the monitor. Karoline's eyes scanned the threats, the vile, misogynistic slurs, the grotesque comments about her husband. One email, with the subject line, "Your private citizen," contained a poorly photoshopped image of their home with a target over it. Karoline felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. This was the price. For defending her family, she had invited a horde of anonymous demons to their doorstep. Later, she called her mother, Mary, back in New Hampshire. Mary's voice, usually a source of unwavering strength, was trembling. "I saw it, honey. On the news. You were so strong, so poised." There was a pause. "But then I went online. Karoline, the things they're saying, the things they're threatening to do to you, to Nick, is it worth it? This job, this ugliness." Karoline closed her eyes, leaning her head against the cold glass of the window. She tried to sound confident, to reassure the woman who gave her life that she was safe. "It's just noise, Mom. It'll pass." But her own voice was thin, betraying the deep crack in her armor. She felt a profound, bone-deep weariness. The public saw a warrior. But in that moment, she just felt like a daughter trying not to scare her mother, a wife who had inadvertently painted a target on the back of the man she loved. She ended the call and sat in the darkness, the weight of it all pressing down on her. A notification chimed softly on her phone. She ignored it. It chimed again. With a sigh, she picked it up, expecting another news alert about the firestorm. But it was a text from a number she didn't immediately recognize. It was from David Sterling, a veteran White House correspondent for a major, left-leaning network, a man who had been a frequent and sharp critic of the administration. The message was short. "Class act today on the lawn. Some lines shouldn't be crossed. Don't let them grind you down." Karoline stared at the screen, reading the words over and over. Support from an ally was expected. Support from an adversary was fortification. It was a small gesture of professional respect that cut through the political noise, a recognition from across the aisle that the principle she had defended was a human one, not a partisan one. She let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding for hours. It was a tiny pinprick of light in the overwhelming darkness. The next morning, Karoline stood in that same office, watching the early light wash over the Washington Monument. The exhaustion was still there, but something had shifted. The fear had not vanished, but it had been joined by a new, harder resolve. She thought of Nick's smile, of her mother's worried voice, and of David's unexpected text. She had drawn the line for them, for herself. But she now realized it was for something bigger. When Jenna arrived with coffee, she found a different woman from the one she had left the night before. Karoline's eyes were clear and determined. "Get me the booking schedules for the Sunday shows," she said, her voice firm. "All of them." If they want to talk about the line, let's talk about it. Her stand on the South Lawn had inadvertently ignited a national conversation that had been simmering for years. It was a conversation not about politics, but about decency, about the point where the public's right to know collides with a person's right to a private soul. People debated it in grocery store lines, on talk radio, and around dinner tables. Where does the job end and the person begin? How much of a person's life does the public own in exchange for their service? Karoline Leavitt, in defending her own family, had become the unlikely champion for everyone who felt that the relentless, invasive glare of the modern world had simply gone too far. She had won her public victory on the lawn, but she had solidified its meaning in the quiet, difficult hours that followed, reaffirming a simple, human principle that the entire country was now forced to confront. What do you think? In our hyper connected world, is it still possible to have a private life if you're in the public eye? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And for more stories that capture the moments that define our times, make sure you subscribe.